There isn't much I remember about the first Luminous arc. That's not to put it down, it just wasn't all that memorable. I forgot who the main character was, what the plot was about, and who was the top waifu. What I do remember is that it was a fun little strategy RPG. So, I recently decided to pick up the sequel, Luminous Arc 2. And I'm happy to say, there's plenty of waifu material here. Oh, also the game is good. Luminous Arc 2 was published in North America by Atlus in 2008. It's a Nintendo DS strategy RPG, and the sequel to the first game, which was also on the DS. I already did a review of that, so feel free to check that out, of course. This title was met with mixed, but mostly decent reviews, and it sold okay. And although I don't say this often, the reviewers probably got it right here. Luminous Arc 2, like its predecessor, is the definition of an average strategy RPG. Does that mean it's a bad game, and you're stupid for liking it? Of course not. I still had a ton of fun with this title. I just think it's rough around the edges, and it could have been a little better if more effort was put into the story and some of the gameplay elements. Let's talk story. In the kingdom of Carvana, in an age where magic supports everyday life and civilization itself, peace is maintained by the Queen's Knights. 16 years before the game's story begins, monsters called Beast Fiends start to appear, destroying everything in their way. Matthias, leader of the Magic Association, uses the evil demon blade to seal away the source of the fiends, but is sealed away himself by the elemental witches. When the game begins, new beast fiends have arrived, and the government overextends its forces trying to protect the entire kingdom. Meanwhile, Fatima, a powerful witch of the association with control of the rare shadow frost magic, goes rogue and starts a conflict with the association, causing more trouble for the kingdom. Trying to solve the crisis, the kingdom starts a research project whose aim is to produce an easier way to use magic. The story starts when the kingdom has just successfully completed the research project and devised a tool known as the Runic Engine. Roland, a knight in training, is accidentally imbued with this new power through some shenanigans, and has to fight to save the world from the Beast Fiends, the Shadow Frost Witch, and more. The plot of this game is painfully average, saved only by the enjoyable characters. It's a typical coming-of-age tale with a few interesting but predictable twists, sprinkles of commentary on racism and such, but it just feels really melodramatic and slow. It's such generic JRPG affair that I honestly found myself skipping a lot of the story because honestly I really just didn't care too much about the overall plot. The characters, however, were well done, sort of. They were vibrant, colorful, all pretty distinct, and their interactions between each other were very fun. The game wasn't also afraid to have these quiet moments between characters once in a while. It wasn't afraid to crack corny jokes, which were still kind of funny sometimes, and just to have a good time with this cast. Still, even though the dialogue was subtle in some places, well, as subtle as a JRPG can be, it wasn't a particularly well-written game, as there are many points in the game where they basically shouted, "Oh, this is how the character feels right now." Regardless, I'll go over some of the characters who stood out to me. The main character, Roland, is absolutely your typical RPG hero with little to no personality. That's all I have to say about that. There's Pip, a little British boy who fights people with a spoon, and when you first meet Pip, he's fighting massive enemy crabs and exploiting their weak points for massive damage. What's really funny about this first encounter is your party jumps into this fight to help Pip, who's a complete stranger, and they want to help him battle a giant crab. But Pip still somehow knows Roland's name because he says it during the battle? Weird. Pip is a little annoying boy with a strong British accent. He reminds me of that guy from South Park. Pop is a little girl who constantly talks about how she wants crabs. I'm very mature, I know. There's also the perverted journalist who's there to provide the same joke across the whole game. And then there's the bad guys who are cackling, but some of them aren't actually bad, but they are. But yeah, you can tell I really didn't care much about the detail in these characters. Again, they aren't especially well written or interesting, but they are strong personalities and you do root for their stupid, stupid faces not to die. Yes, high praise, I know. The gameplay is where I found most enjoyment in this game, as it is a very, very solid title, and it kept me playing. It's very much like the first title, or Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Like the first game, you get perhaps 20 characters or so, each with their own distinct traits, attacks, and strategic uses. I really love how each unique character had different skills, and that made battling a whole lot more interesting. It also helped make the story more interesting, because whenever Roland attacked some asshole who just killed his hero, it just felt damn good to smack him in the back of the head with a sword. Or you could attack your own characters who you didn't like. I'm looking at you, Alti. Speaking of Alti, there are random points in the game where the game forces you to include her in the party. Oh, I should have mentioned this back in the character section, by the way. She's actually the heroine of the game, I guess, but she's absolutely terrible and forgettable. I hate her guts. I just hate her guts. She's kind of an asshole. Anyway, at many points in the game forces you to include her in your party. Why does Alti have to be in my party for strange reasons I don't care about? My characters were like 15 levels higher than her, and then they forced me to include her in the battle. So I basically just had a pylon there that took up one of my 6 precious spots, and got my ass kicked many times. I really, really hate it when games do this. Well, where was I? Oh, right, the gameplay. Like the first game, you have a bunch of story-driven battles, you can do some side quests, and more. In between chapters, you have these intermissions, where you get to watch these sometimes funny, sometimes awkward little skits with Copen, who the game is really trying to push as their mascot. There was also these intermissions where characters interact, and you get to choose who they interact with, and you can get a better gauge of their personality and goals. These intermissions provided the game with some element of uniqueness, and I enjoyed the inclusion. Another element of the gameplay that I enjoyed less, though, was the menus? Yeah, I'm complaining about the menus. The menus suck ass in this game. They're very, very slow. Buying items is just really annoying because of how long it takes, and I don't even understand how to do half the stuff I need to do. Like when you press pause on the battle screen, there's just a bunch of symbols pop up. Why don't you just have like the words instead of pictures? I don't get it. I just don't know what's going on. Anyway, seriously, it was such a chore to have to re-equip every character that you wanted to fight with because the menus were so cumbersome. Like, how do you mess the menus up? I should never, ever spend time in a review bitching about the menus. But Luminous Arc 2, you menu designers in Luminous Arc 2, you messed up, and I'm calling you out for it. Whew. God. Menus. Anyway, on to the actual battle system. Again, the combat was this game's strong suit. You have your typical magic, attacks, special abilities, kind of knock-off limit breaks, etc. The battle system is fun thanks to pretty balanced gameplay. Again, everyone has their own unique abilities and strategic combinations, and it was very, very satisfying to find these strategies and use them to kick ass. I didn't only rely on one strategy the whole game, which many RPGs are guilty of. For example, Roland had the power to unite with other witches on the field in order to gain new attributes and some of their powers. When you unite, it shows the woman in dresses when you engage. Is that a joke about the rings and literally getting engaged? I don't know, I can't explain. Anyway, you get a nice boost to certain powers for Roland when you engage with one of the witches, but not all characters are witches, so you'll probably want to have at least 1 or 2 witches in every fight so Roland can have different powers in his repertoire if need be. And they obviously give you kind of different powers and they boost different stats, so having certain witches will help in certain battles. Roland's brother, Rache, is a tank. Rena uses arrows, later characters have fantastic mobility or strength, so there's a lot of different combinations or strategies to try. The difficulty was also excellent. I never felt like I was breezing through this game, but when I won, I felt like I really earned it. However, you'll probably want to grind at some points, or you'll get smacked out by the final fights. Regardless, the battle system was fun, challenging, and provided good variety. So, if you're just looking for a fun little strategy game, Luminous Arc 2 delivers you a 20 to 30 hour quest, and it's pretty enjoyable. The graphics in the game are pretty good. The character designs are colorful and unique. Rash or Rashay looks like Redhead Squall for some reason, but other than that, the overall designs feel somewhat unique. The locations are a little uninteresting until the end of the game though. My one big complaint with the graphics here is the amount of fan service. There's a lot of fan service in this game, like damn. From the aforementioned engagement pictures that show every witch in a wedding dress for some reason, to Fatima's breast literally taking up 99% of my attention when she's on screen. Maybe that's why I didn't pay much attention to important story modes. Anyway, I just felt really pandered to, and really awkward when I played this game on the subway, and people were probably looking over my shoulder and judging me so hard. In any case, other than the painful fan service, I did find the game visually engaging, for the most part. The music in the game is pretty forgettable. I can only remember a couple of songs faithfully. One in particular that stood out was the menu song because I spent so long in those goddamn forsaken menus. Anyway, my hero, Yatsunori Mitsuda, who assisted with the music in the last game, also assists here, but he didn't really compose anything to my knowledge. But Yoko Shimomura did, and she's usually really good at creating memorable tunes here. Still, most of the songs in the game, although they sound good in the game, I couldn't really keep them in my head afterwards. Even though there was a couple of songs that did stick with me, like again the menu music and the Shadow Frost Witch theme, it really wasn't an outstanding soundtrack in any way, but better than average. There's also a decent amount of voice acting here, and it was pretty well done. And there was a whole lot of other one-liners being spewed during battle too, but I guess that kind of adds to the charm. To conclude, Luminous Arc 2 is on par with its predecessor. It's a fun tactical RPG with spunky characters, but it's much too average in its story. I think the characters, intermissions, and such keep this game from being completely forgettable, but I have to still emphasize that I really enjoyed Luminous Arc 2. It's fun, and it's easy to digest. I still think you'd be better off going with the Tactics series, but there's a lot to be enjoyed in this one, especially if you enjoyed the first. Just be ready, because the toughest enemy in the game can't be found on the battlefield, but in your very own menu. Ugh. In any case, this game gets a light recommendation. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to our next random encounter.